To discuss a very important topic about there are two types of verbs. One is finite verb and the other is non-finite verb. So we are first to learn which verb is called finite verb and which verb is called non-finite verb. Then we are to see the various rules that apply to non-finite verb. First, I just give a simple example. For instance, you may say, I want to go now. So in this sentence, there are two verbs. One is want and the other is to go. So the first one is called finite verb. What is the difference between finite and non-finite verb? Finite verb is governed by tense, by the subject. There are changes if the subject changes, if the tense changes, then the finite verb changes. For instance, we can say he wants. If I, in place of I, we use he, then want will change into wants. And similarly, if we want to say this very thing into past, he wanted. But to go, which is non-finite verb, will remain unchanged. There may be a change in tense, there may be a change in person, but non-finite verb never changes according to tense or according to the subject of the sentence. So this is the major difference. In Hindi also, if we give this very example, मैं जाना चाहता हूँ, मैं जाना चाहता था, मैं जाना चाहूँगा, तो ये जो जाना शब्द है ये नॉन फाइनाइट है, ये जाना ही रहेगा, चाहे चाहता हूँ कहें, चाहे चाहता था कहें, या जाना चाहूँगा कहें, तो जाना डजंट चेंज. So this jana represents non-finite verb, and this non-finite verb is represented in 3 or 4 ways. First, generally we have infinitive, that is to plus first form after a lot of verbs. For example, he hopes to pass, he tried to attack me, and he attempted to kill him. So many I meant to help you. So these are the various verbs which are generally followed by infinitive. But there are certain verbs where we don't have to use to. We have to use simply first form after the finite verb. And then in between, sometimes there is object also. But I want to point out those words where you have to use bare infinitive, that is only the base form of the verb, only the first form of the verb without using to before it. So some of the verbs which are governed by this rule are as follows. Number 1, all the modal verbs. He can go, he may go, he will go, he should go. So all these may, might, can, could, shall, should, they are always followed by first form of the verb without to. Similarly, if there are let and make, these are two verbs where after which we don't use to. For instance, he let me enter his house. So here let is followed by enter. There is some object in between, but we don't say let me to enter his house. He made me stand up on the bench. So here made is followed by stand up, not by to. So similarly, there are many other verbs which are governed by this rule. For instance, had better is followed by first form. Had better is a way of giving advice. You had better give up smoking, otherwise you would catch cancer. So here in this sentence, had better is a way of giving advice in the present, and the verb that comes after it is always bare infinitive. There is no use of to in the case of had better. Similar is the case when we use let and make. Then there are some verbs of senses. See, hear, watch, notice, feel, observe. They are also followed by bare infinitive. We don't use to after them. For instance, I saw him cross the road. We don't say I saw him to cross the road. I heard him conspire against the Prime Minister. Heard is followed by conspire, not to conspire. Similar is the case I smelled something burn. So then, matlab smelt, hear, watch, notice, feel, all these are senses verb and they generally have bare infinitive. But here there is some difference that in verbs of senses, sometimes we can use gerund or ing. So, for instance, we can say, I saw him crossing the road, I saw him cross the road. Both are equally correct, but there is slight difference in the meaning. When we say, I saw him crossing the road, it means he had not completed the crossing, the act of crossing. When I say, I saw him cross the road, it means I continued seeing him till the act of crossing was completed. Similarly, when something happens repeatedly, then we use ing, and when there is a single action, then we use first form without to. For instance, the dog kept the dog. I heard the dog barking the whole night. I saw her throw the dust into the street. So in the first, I heard the dog barking. Here it is a repeated action. The dog continued barking. But in the second sentence, it was a single action. She threw the refuse or rubbish into the street. So here we will not use ing. So these are subtle differences. Otherwise, the senses verb are also followed by bare infinitive. Similarly, would rather, bid, these are also followed by bare infinitive. For instance, I would rather die than beg. He would rather die than feel sorry. All these things plus show preference, and after would rather we generally use bare infinitive. Similarly, when have is followed by object and then non-finite verb is to be used, in that case also we have to use bare infinitive. I would have you go to the market and bring 5 kilos of sugar. So I would have you, not I would have you to go to the market. I would have you go to the market. So in this way, bid is also one such word where thereafter we use bare infinitive. For instance, he bade me leave the room. Here we don't say he bade me to leave the room. So these are some of the main verbs where we have to keep in mind that only first form is used without to. But when these verbs are changed into passive voice, then to has to be used. For instance, he made me leave the class. If it is to be changed into passive voice, then we would say I was made to leave the class. When it is passive voice, then made is followed by to. So is the case with other. I heard him speaking. He was heard to speak. So I heard him speak and he was heard to speak. Whenever these words where bare infinitive has to be used are translated into passive voice, in that case to is allowed. Otherwise, we don't use to after these verbs. Similar is the case with help. Here it is optional. You can use to or you can make the sentence without to. He helped me carry the luggage to the station. Here we have not used to. But if we say he helped me to carry the luggage to the station, it is also equally correct. So after help we can have discretion. We can use to or can omit to. This is permissible as per grammar rules. Now we want to discuss how ing also represents non-finite verb. Those words which carry ing, they are generally called gerund. So what are the rules which we have to observe while framing sentences with ing? Number one, whenever in a sentence there is preposition. After preposition, the verb is always the verb is used with ing. For instance, he insisted on going to the picture. He succeeded in getting first division. By working hard, he became a doctor. So all these by, in, on, all these prepositions, they are followed by ing. But sometimes confusion arises between two, whether it is a part of infinitive or whether it is a part of preposition. So we have to be very careful to see that in case to is a preposition, then a gerund will have to be used. For instance, if we say with a view to helping the poor, he set up this laboratory. So with a view to is a phrase in which to is used as a preposition. So we will use with a view to helping the poor. Then similarly, when we say he is accustomed to ये adjective होते हैं and it is always followed by to. He is accustomed to walking a lot. So here also we will use walking. But when he wants to go, here to is not aligned with wants. Here wants doesn't always carry to. So in such a case, when we use to, it is a part of the infinitive. Generally, we make some sort of confusion when we use used to and am used to. If we use used to as a modal, it is a past tense. It is used for repeated action in the past. He used to go for a walk every day when he was at the university. So used to here represents the repeated action of the past. But when used to precedes, when some other modal precedes used to, then we use gerund. I am used to working hard. Here am is used, and used to here is used as an adjective. It is not a modal verb. It does not represent past tense. Here used to is equivalent to accustomed to. It is equivalent to habituated to. So this kind of there is a difference when we find he got used to living in this atmosphere. So here used to mean he got accustomed to. But he used to abuse his opponents when in the opposition. So here used to refer to the past habit. Whenever used to refers to the past habit or as a modal, then we have first form. But when used to means a sort of adjective and we shows accustomed to, then gerund is used after used to. So this type of confusion also generally arises. Then there are certain verbs which generally have gerund after them. So we have to remember these verbs in case we go through them twice or thrice, then we will be able to remember that these verbs are followed by gerund. He wants to go, here we use infinitive, but he enjoys swimming. Here enjoys is such a verb which is always followed by gerund. So I may give some list of such verbs where we have to use gerund. For instance, enjoy, postpone, avoid, deny, resist, risk, imagine, fancy, miss, and some other verbs feel like, worth, and these are some of the common verbs which are generally followed by gerund. I say, for instance, I avoid meeting him. I don't say I avoid to meet him. I say I feel like reading this novel. We don't say I feel like to read this novel. Similarly, consider, I consider calling a meeting. Here consider is followed by ing. Similarly, recall, he recalled meeting us last year. Similarly, envisage, contemplate, these are also such verbs which are generally followed by ing. He contemplated holding a next meeting very soon. Contemplate, envisage, recall, postpone, miss. So these are the few verbs which are generally followed by gerund. But there are certain verbs where we can use either infinitive or gerund. There are 4 such verbs. For instance, continue, begin, start, and cease. These are 4 verbs. We can say he started to speak, he started speaking. He began writing, he began to write. He continued consulting me, he continued to consult me. So all these four verbs can have either infinitive or gerund after them. But there are certain verbs where the meaning changes in case infinitive is used and if gerund is used. For example, remember, forget, and regret. So these are three verbs. If we remember the action that has already taken place, then we use gerund. For instance, I remember meeting him. Here, meeting means I have met him. This action has already taken place. But if I say I remember to meet him, I remember that I am to do this action of meeting him. This meeting has not yet taken place. So in this sentence, remember to means the remembering is being done first, action is to happen later. And in the first sentence, action happened earlier and remembering is being done about that action which has already happened. So is the case with regret. For instance, I say, I regret calling you a thief. I regret to call you a thief. There is a difference in meaning of these two sentences. I regret calling means I called you a thief and now I feel sorry for that. And if I say I regret to call you, I am very sorry to say that I will have to call you a thief. So here calling, the action of calling a thief is yet to take place. But in the previous sentence, this action had already taken place and regret is being expressed subsequently. So is the case with forget also. When we say I forgot to pay him money, I forgot paying him money, so it makes a lot of difference. In the first sentence, I forgot that I was to pay him. But in the second sentence, it means though I had paid him the money, but I could not remember it. I forgot that I have already paid him the money. So these are the three verbs where if the action has already happened, then we use gerund. If the action is yet to happen, then we use to. Similarly, there is a verb stop. If we say the action is to be stopped, then we use ing. Stop writing, stop laughing. So this action is to be stopped. But when we say I stopped to buy a pen, here the action has not stopped, but the person concerned has stopped to do something. So we use to after stop when some action is to be done, and we use ing after stop when the action is to be brought to an end, that is to be stopped. Similarly, there is a word go on to and go on plus ing. If there is one action which continues to be done from the beginning to the end, then we use gerund. He went on telling his experiences about in the war. So he started telling about his experiences and he continued telling them. But when we changed the topic, in the beginning we started saying something, but then we switched over to some other topic, then to is used. He went on to tell about his early life also. First he was telling something else, then he started telling about his early life. So this is the difference between went on to or went on plus ing. So similarly, try is a word which is generally followed by infinitive. But when there is a difference in the meaning of try, then we can use ing also. For instance, he tried to break open the door. Here tried means he made efforts. He tried to open the door. But try adding some water into the solution, then it will become workable. So here try means to make experiment, to test. Here you are not to make, try putting on your new dress. Here try means just test it whether it suits you or not, whether it has proper dimension or not. So in this way try can be followed by ing if it means to experiment or to test, but when it means to work hard, then it requires infinitive. Similarly, there is come, there is a word come. So we use come, we use to also after come and ing also. When something happens gradually, then we generally use infinitive. He came to be recognized as a good teacher. So here came to be recognized. Slowly people started recognizing him as a good teacher. But if we say he came running, he came laughing, how he came, then gerund is followed. In this case, he came running, here Jana ing will have to be used. So similarly, there are two verbs, want and need. If we use ing after them, it has passive meaning. And if we use to after them, we will have to use passive infinitive. For instance, this car needs to be repaired. Here, because this car is not a subject, so passive infinitive will have to be used. But this sentence can also be said, this car needs repair. For instance, this house wants renovating, or this house wants to be renovated. Both these sentences have the same meaning. In the first sentence we have used activize, but in the second sentence we have used passivize. When gerund is used after want, it has passive meaning. We need not translate it into passive construction. But when infinitive is used, then it will have to be used in the passive construction. I have tried to discuss some very relevant and important rules which are not very clear to most of the students. If they find this video informative and useful, knowledgeable, then I would want you to show your liking for it, to share it and subscribe to it, so that others may also be benefited from it.